Hi, I'm Constance Rhodes, and if you've been looking around on the site, you might have seen another interview that we did with Missi Hale, who had done some music for us here on the site. But I wanted to take a moment and talk with Missi's former roommate and now current roommate again, Mahlea, who was living with Missi when she was going through her struggle with bulimia. And I just wanted a little bit of insight because we never talk about the other side, the other victims of eating disorders. And Mahlea, I wanted to know, what was it like living with someone that you cared about who was struggling so hard with an eating disorder? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think what was difficult the most was that I was not only, her roommate, but I was also her best friend. And sometimes those situations are different. I mean, they're practical situations that you find yourself trying to communicate with somebody, but if there are all these different layers, it's different.
Yeah, and one of the things I remember you talked to me about was when you guys would go out to eat. Like, explain that whole thing.
What were you going to say?
No.
Okay. What was difficult about us going out to eat was that I believe that our friendship focused on, I guess the food, that ritual of eating, getting together and eating, and I decided that when she was the most distant was when we were eating, and I started to feel a little robbed of that time, and so I noticed that she would kind of, check out because she had this internal dialogue going on. So
Now, did you realize that was happening when you guys were having meals? Did you realize you were kind of checking out and thinking about everything that was in everything that you were, looking at on your plate?
Well, I mean, it wasn't until Mahlea actually told me that I really realized. I mean, I knew that when I had food in front of me, I was thinking that, but I didn't realize it was as obvious as it was.
Mm-hmm. So, like any addicted type of a person, you probably thought you were hiding all of this from everyone around you. Was she?
Well, I think that I'm a little bit more intuitive than most because I had been in company of closer friends that were either aware or just didn't question, and I think it actually boils down to how much you care about somebody. I mean, it's one thing to, if someone's maximized all their time and then they decide to have that one dinner date in which it just wasn't worth it and they end up doing it anyway and they're distant, but this was different. It was I could pretty much bet on what was going to happen. And
so you guys were in the house together, and you're probably hearing stuff happening or noticing stuff happening. What did that feel like for you to know that here you are in your house, here's someone you love and you want to help, and yet this is going on, and can I say anything? Should I say anything? What was that like?
I felt that I noticed her patterns or her habits, and so those of you who are familiar with binges or not, I would know when she'd have a binge, or I'd know when she'd try to control her eating because of just the trash or little things like that. And so that's hard too because if someone is telling you to hold them accountable, then you feel like you have to express that. And so but then also when you're living with them, that's also different too because there are a lot of layers, like I said, so sometimes things get really personal as opposed to just open honesty. So that was, I think, the struggle the most. But yes, I did notice little habits, and I just knew when she was going through certain things, and
Well, and I've lived with a bulimic also, and I remember when that's going on, I would get real kind of mad sometimes because I'd be like, can't you just see, here you are, I can help you, and can't you just help, let me help you, let me walk into your life a little bit, and it's kind of hard to do. Now, you said that she had asked you to hold her accountable, right?
Yes.
And did you really mean that? I mean, what?
Yes.
Okay, so you did. So how did that work in your relationship then? Did that put distance between you because then you wanted to hide what was going on and not be too close? Or?
I think, at least on my end, so much pride snuck into, I just was so not in the mood to admit that that I was struggling with something, even though I knew I needed to ask Mahlea to be an accountability partner, and or her to hold me accountable. Even though I knew that I was supposed to do that, it was still it still hurt my pride, and so I still wanted to hide it. I still did. I tried to.
that's what's hard about being the close friend when
Yeah.
you know that about somebody.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
start to guard them. That's when I knew there was a problem because it was starting to affect me and then our relationship. I was starting to cover up for her
Right.
in a way and make excuses for her. And I knew, coming from an alcoholic background, my father was an alcoholic, that you can't start making excuses.
This was before I actually got counseling and got really help. This is kind of the first step of like, I need accountability. And then it got so iffy to the point where y'all were like, you need to get help for this. I can't be your.
So you came to her and confronted her, and how did that go?
Well, there was just a certain point where you decide, like, how much of this can I control now? If you've done all that you can as a person, and it's starting to affect you, and you know that it's just, like she was saying, like, hurting her pride, and she was taking it more personally. You know, there's somebody that maybe needs to be out of the friendship circle, that really needs to come in almost as a role model to really help her out of it. And so I think that I just, I decided then, it was one morning, and I just went out there and I was honest about it, and I actually really prayed about it and thought about it for a while, and I thought, you know, this makes sense. I can say this, and I could just say this, you know, like, loving her. Like, I love you this much that I don't want this to affect our friendship in the future. So I want to, like, let go of this and then, you know, let you take care of it in your own way.
So that was good for you to get that off your chest, right?
Yes.
And then how was that for you? Did you receive that? How did that end up working into your own recovery journey?
I think at first I didn't receive it well, but I think it was like the realization of like, okay, at least inside, I was like, I know, you know.
So it was an important
And-
step in the whole
yeah.
process of getting the help that you needed?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And even after I had gotten the help that I needed, I mean, I think we had a couple come to Jesus conversations too, because I kept, you know, trying to hide it still. But through that, her making me aware and the counseling, it definitely made a
Good.
huge difference.
Well, you know, we could talk about it all day. There's so many different angles to cover, but I really appreciate you sharing that perspective. You guys that are out there who love someone that is struggling with an eating disorder, you need to know that we've got help and hope for you here too. And you can check that out in the Hope to Cope, Hope for Coping section. And Missi, thanks again. Mahlea, thanks again.
Sure.